I was standing in a queue when the woman in front of me turned and asked why I wasn't wearing a mask. She had on a mask which matched her blouse and seemed to have been made out of material guaranteed not to show any marks if she vomited down the front. She was aged between 25 and 65. It's difficult to tell when people are wearing a mask, and she looked very stern, humourless and unyielding. Probably a clerk in the local planning office. "But I am wearing a mask," I replied merrily. "It's one of the new invisible masks. They make them out of a material that's gossamer thin and totally diaphanous." These are dark days, and you have to have a bit of fun where you can. The woman stared at me. She didn't move her feet, but she leant forward another inch or so. You could tell she wanted to come closer, but she wasn't that daring. She would have no more come closer to take a look than she'd have climbed onto the counter, straddled the electronic till and done a jiggly dance. She frowned in concentration. "Really?" she said. "Really?" I replied. "Oh," she said. Moments later, a small bloke in jeans and a dirty jumper, with a comb-over and a mask with little flowers on it, came up and snarled, "Do you have a mask?" "Afraid not," I replied, "but if you need one, you can buy them on the internet." He frowned and hurried off. As I left the store, another bloke confronted me with the same boring question. I smiled and told him I'd trained as a pearl diver and had managed to hold my breath throughout my shopping expedition. I find that going out is an adventure these days. The mask wearers accept this rubbish because the masks have damaged their brains. You can tell them anything and they'll believe it. You could tell them Matt Hancock's a human being and they'd believe it, even though the sad fellow has a brain the size of a pea, and a split pea at that. I've been writing about face masks for months, but the truth about face masks is now difficult to find. It's like looking for an honest politician. Such highly esteemed medical organizations as the Global Economic Forum, Goldman Sachs, the World Health Organization and the BBC all say masks pose no danger to us. I'm actually waiting for the BBC to publish a report claiming that you can wear your mask all day long, swim in it, sleep in it, and eat it with horseradish sauce, and it won't do you any harm. Not surprisingly, vital evidence outlining the dangers and ineffectiveness of mask wearing has been banned, hidden, or deleted from the internet. My videos assessing the value of face mask wearing on the basis of scientific evidence have been removed, though not from brand YouTube. Discussion and debate about the value of face masks are suppressed by politicians and the media. When I discussed masks and the new Pfizer vaccine on the Richie Allen radio show, the recording was removed from Screw YouTube within hours. Research material outlining the danger of mask wearing has been removed from the internet on the basis that it is no longer relevant in our current climate. So-called fact-checkers invariably dismiss medical reports published by doctors and scientists, however eminent those experts may be. They're happy, it seems, to accept views from politicians and others. These so-called fact-checkers are often linked to commercial organizations or groups with commercial links. No one seems to check the fact-checkers, though they should. I've spent weeks digging out the real science on masks, and I've just finished a new book entitled Proof That Masks Do More Harm Than Good. The references for all the evidence in this video are in the book. I'm giving away the book as a public service, and later I'll tell you how you can get your free copy. Before I start, it's worth remembering that thousands of years ago it was discovered that forcing people to wear masks, covering up most of their faces, broke their will and made them subservient. Masks depersonalized the wearers and dehumanized them. More recently, CIA torture techniques include forcing people to wear masks. Mask wearers have been encouraged by the PSYOP specialist to show their hatred for non-mask wearers. This loathsome ploy seems designed to make those who cannot or do not wear masks feel guilty and ashamed. The mentally and physically disabled will, therefore, be harassed and abused if they dare go out of their homes. Maybe we should start a counter-PSYOP movement and spread the word that only ugly people wear masks. More and more people are now wearing masks outside. Mainstream media rarely publishes a picture of anyone outside without a mask. It's clear that the public would soon be forced to wear masks out of doors even when exercising. But we should remember that 2 children died in China and 2 died in Germany because they were wearing masks, and a workman fell off a ladder because he was wearing a mask and became hypoxic, and there's been at least 1 vehicle accident as a result of mask wearing. Those who defend mask wearing claim that the practice must be safe because surgeons and operating theatre staff wear masks. But operating theatres have controlled air temperature, masks are replaced every couple of hours, and those working in an operating theatre don't rush around doing their shopping. It's important to remember that surgeons who wear masks, and not all do, work while standing rather than walking, and they work in a controlled air-conditioned environment. They don't touch their masks, and they change them regularly. They never stuff them in their pockets or their handbags. Surgeons have been using surgical masks since their introduction in 1897, and it has for some years been customary for surgeons and nurses to wear surgical masks in the operating theatre, as long as they change them part of the way through any procedure lasting more than a few hours. However, the writers of a paper entitled Preliminary Report on Surgical Mask-Induced Deoxygenation During Major Surgery investigated a total of 53 surgeons of both sexes, all employed at university hospitals, aged between 24 and 54 years of age. All were non-smokers. None had any chronic lung disease. The study showed that the longer a mask was worn, the greater the fall in blood oxygen levels. This may lead to the individual passing out, and it may also affect natural immunity, thereby increasing the risk of infection. A paper entitled Surgical Face Masks in Modern Operating Rooms, a Costly and Unnecessary Ritual, found no difference in wound infection rates with or without surgical masks. Other scientific research papers have established similar conclusions. A paper entitled Is a Mask Necessary in the Operating Theatre found no difference in wound infection rates whether or not surgeons wore surgical masks. Surgeons and nurses, remember, are trained never to touch any part of a mask except for the nose bridge and the ear loops, and if any part of a mask is touched accidentally, then the mask is discarded and replaced. There was a paper in the British Medical Journal entitled A Cluster Randomised Trial of Cloth Masks Compared with Medical Masks in Healthcare Workers, concluded that cloth masks should not be recommended for healthcare workers. Research conducted by 4 French doctors was designed to evaluate the effect of wearing a surgical mask during a 6-minute walking test. The researchers found that dyspnea variation was significantly higher with a surgical mask and concluded that the difference was clinically relevant. The big problem with masks is that the cut down in oxygen intake is accompanied by a push up in carbon dioxide intake. The tighter a mask fits, the more likely it is to reduce blood oxygen levels and to increase the amount of carbon dioxide being inhaled. In my book, I've taken a look at figures from the United States Occupational Safety and Health Administration, both for oxygen and carbon dioxide. An associated problem is that lower oxygen levels and increased levels of carbon dioxide stimulate greater inspiratory flow, leading to a greater risk that loose fibres from the face mask will be inhaled. I'll deal with that risk in a moment. Then there's the fact that face masks simply don't work. Between 2004 and 2016, at least 12 articles appeared in medical and scientific journals showing that face masks do not prevent the transmission of infection. And those tests were with approved masks rather than masks made out of old dishcloths, bras and bits of unwanted dress material. It was proved in 1920 that cloth masks fail to impede or stop flu virus transmissions, it was concluded that the number of layers of fabric required to prevent pathogen penetration would require a suffocating number of layers and couldn't be used. It was also recognised that there was a problem of leakage around the edges of cloth masks. In a paper entitled Physical Interventions to Interrupt or Reduce the Spread of Respiratory Viruses, the authors concluded that compared to not wearing a mask, there was no reduction of influenza-like illnesses when healthcare workers or the general public wore masks. The details are all in the book. In March 2020, Dr. Jenny Harries, Deputy Chief Medical Officer in the UK, warned that it is possible to trap the virus in a mask and start breathing it in. She said that wearing a mask was not a good idea. Professor Chris Whitty, the UK's Chief Medical Officer, said in March 2020 that wearing a face mask had almost no effect on reducing the risk of contracting COVID-19 and that the government did not advise healthy individuals to wear masks. Instead, he suggested that people should wash their hands for roughly 20 seconds. I love that. A meta-analysis published in May in 2020 by the Centers for Disease Control was entitled Non-Pharmaceutical Measures for Pandemic Influenza in Non-Healthcare Settings, Personal Protective and Environmental Measures. Wow. The authors concluded that the evidence from randomized controlled trials of face masks did not support a substantial effect on the transmission of laboratory-confirmed influenza, either when worn by infected persons or by persons in the general community, to reduce their susceptibility. A meta-analysis in the Canadian Medical Association Journal concluded that both randomized controlled trials and observational studies of N95 respirators and surgical masks used by healthcare workers did not show any benefit against the transmission of acute respiratory infections. A scientific paper published in the Journal of the American Medical Association involved 2,862 volunteers and showed that both surgical masks and N95 respirators resulted in no significant difference in the incidence of laboratory-confirmed influenza. Fabric masks may allow viruses to enter and are not considered to be anywhere near as protective as surgical masks. A study I've seen concluded that face masks made out of cloth are not very good at filtering out viruses because the pores are much bigger than the particulate matter that needs to be kept out. One study showed that face masks may have pores 5,000 times larger than virus particles. If this is accurate, and I think it is, it means that the virus will wander through the face mask much like a mouse wandering through Marble Arch. Masks will, however, doubtless provide protection against snowballs and flies. Well, large flies anyway. The World Health Organization, which originally opposed face masks, now recommends that disposable masks should be worn and discarded after one use. And the evidence shows that they should be changed every 2 hours. Few people can afford to buy 6 masks a day, and so masks are frequently worn more than once. This massively increases the risk of a chest infection developing. A paper entitled Use of Surgical Face Masks to Reduce the Incidence of the Common Cold Among Health Workers in Japan, a randomized clinical trial, was published in the American Journal of Infection Control and concluded that face mask use was found not to be protective against the common cold when compared to controls who did not wear face masks. A paper called Post-Operative Wound Infections and Surgical Face Masks, a Controlled Study, found the use of masks in surgery was found to slightly increase the incidence of infection over not masking in a study of 3,088 surgeries. A study published again in the British Medical Journal showed healthcare workers wearing cloth masks had significantly higher rates of influenza-like illnesses after 4 weeks of using masks at work when compared to controls. And there are lots of specific risks with masks. In Belgium, in September 2020, a group of 70 doctors sent an open letter to the Flemish Education Minister in which they claimed that children are being badly affected by having to wear face masks. Mandatory face masks in school are a major threat to their development, they wrote. Dentists in New York have reported seeing a number of patients with inflamed gums and other problems due to masks. We're seeing inflammation in people's gums that have been healthy forever, and cavities in people who've never had them before, said one dentist. About 50% of our patients are being impacted by this, so we've decided to name it mask mouth. The problems caused by the fact that face coverings increase mouth dryness and contribute to a build-up of bad bacteria. People tend to breathe through their mouth instead of through their nose when wearing a mask, said one dentist. The mouth breathing is causing the dry mouth, which leads to a decrease in saliva, and saliva is what fights the bacteria and cleanses your teeth. The BBC and screw YouTube won't tell you this, but mask wearers are more likely to develop infection than non-mask wearers. This may be due to the fact that masks reduce blood oxygen levels and adversely affect natural immunity. It's likely that anyone who wears a face mask for long periods will have a damaged immune system and be more susceptible to infection. Studies have shown that hypoxia can inhibit immune cells used to fight viral infections. Wearing a mask may make the wearer more likely to develop an infection, and if an infection does develop, it's likely to be worse. Low oxygen levels reduce T cells and therefore reduce immunity levels. Moreover, while the mask wearer thinks that they're becoming accustomed to rebreathing exhaled air, the problems within the brain are growing as the oxygen deprivation continues. Brain cells which die because of a shortage of oxygen will never be replaced. They're gone forever. A leading neurologist has pointed out that children and teenagers should never wear masks, partly because they have extremely active and adaptive immune systems, but also because their brains are especially active and vulnerable. The more active an organ is, the more oxygen it needs, and so the damage to children's brains is huge and irreversible. She warns that dementia is going to increase in 10 years, and the younger generation will not be able to reach their potential because of wearing masks. A paper entitled Face Coverings, Aerosol Dispersion and Mitigation of Virus Transmission Risk showed that the backward unfiltered airflow was found to be strong with all the masks tested compared to individuals not wearing masks. In other words, if a person wearing a mask has an infection, then the risk of being infected is high for anyone standing behind the wearer. There's more, plenty more. Face masks cause skin problems. A dermatologist has warned that face masks trap warm moisture that's produced when we exhale. For those with acne, this can lead to acne flares. For many others, this warm, moist environment surrounding the skin creates the perfect condition for naturally occurring yeast and bacteria to flourish and grow more abundant. This overgrowth of yeast and bacteria can produce angular cheilitis, the cracking and sores at the corners of the mouth. Face masks can also present a risk of contact dermatitis and can increase the risk of staph infections. Face masks cause eye problems too. A paper in an ophthalmology journal warned of an increase in dry eye symptoms among mask wearers. Those using masks regularly for extended periods are more likely to show symptoms. The condition is caused by exhaled air blowing upwards from the mask into the eyes. The increased airflow causes irritation or inflammation. The author's advice is that lubricant eye drops should be used and goggles should be worn. If you wear a mask, you should wear goggles all day. Not dark glasses, goggles. Swimming goggles, skiing goggles. And here's another very real worry. Investigators found loose particulate on each type of mask. They warned that even if a small portion of mask fibers is detachable by inspiratory inflow, there's a possibility of not only entry of foreign material to the airways, but also entry to deep lung tissue and potential pathological consequences of foreign bodies in the lungs. There's a correlation between the inhalation of synthetic fibers and various bronchopulmonary diseases such as asthma, alveolitis, chronic bronchitis, bronchiectasis, fibrosis, spontaneous pneumothorax, and chronic pneumonia. Studies have shown that loose fibers are seen on all types of masks and may be inhaled, causing serious lung damage. One risk is pulmonary fibrosis, a disease which can't be cured and has a poor survival rate. It's also been reported that mask wearers may develop a sore throat. An infectious disease specialist reports that humidity will let bacteria continue to grow inside the mask, so if you were growing bacteria in that area and you were breathing that inside, you can get an infection, especially strep or any other bacteria that can cause infection. There's much more evidence supporting the fact that masks should not be worn. Over a dozen scientific papers show clearly that masks are ineffective in preventing the movement of infective organisms and/or reduce oxygen levels and expose wearers to increased levels of carbon dioxide. Over a dozen studies failed to show that wearing a mask provides protection against infection. A meta-analysis of 17 separate studies proved that none of the research showed masks to be useful in preventing influenza infection. The available medical evidence proves overwhelmingly that masks do no good in preventing the spread of infection, but do a great deal of harm to those wearing them. This quote is taken from the New England Journal of Medicine. I quote, "The chances of catching COVID-19 from a passing interaction in a public space is therefore minimal. In many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive reaction to anxiety over the pandemic." Close quotes. Invariably, symptoms caused by mask wearing are now being wrongly blamed on COVID-19. It seems likely that when mask wearing starts to result in deaths, as it will do, those deaths will be blamed on COVID-19 and used as a reason for politicians and advisors to demand that people wear masks for even longer hours, including out of doors and at home. The vicious circle will be complete. In the UK, if you don't wear a mask because you've decided you're exempt and the government says this is a personal choice, the official advice is that you should not routinely be required to produce any written evidence to justify the fact that you're not wearing a mask. And although I'm no lawyer, of course, I rather doubt that busybodies, whoever they are, have any right to ask you why you've decided that you're exempt. My website, www.vernoncoleman.com, includes a link to a section of the government website which provides an exemption badge which can be printed out and attached to a lanyard. You can get the lanyards from banks and supermarkets. When the truth finally comes out about the dangers of masks, teachers making children wear masks in school will be sued. Bosses making their employees wear masks will also be sued. If you've been told you have to wear a mask, write down the name of the person forcing you to endanger your health. Put down the place and the time and tell them to sign to confirm that they're ordering you to wear a mask. Ignorance of the science will be no defence, and as the Nuremberg defendants discovered, the reply, "I was obeying orders," is no defence. Thank you for watching An Old Man in a Chair, and thank you for all your support, encouragement and kind comments, which are much appreciated. My book, by the way, about masks, proof that masks do more harm than good, is available on Smashwords, and it's free of charge. It's only available as an ebook at the moment because that's the only way I can get to produce it. There's a link on my website, www.vernoncoleman.com, which takes you straight to the bit on Smashwords where the book's available, and all you do is download it and read it and be amazed. Please copy and share this video wherever you like. Let's spread the truth. If you'd like to put on a translation, that would be great. Please put comments on my videos and please press the thumbs up button. This channel on Brand YouTube has not been monetized, nor will it ever be. This is purely a public service channel, and thanks to Mohammed Butt and BNT for their support. You'll find transcripts of all the videos that were banned by Screw YouTube and all the other videos in www.vernoncoleman.com, and there are lists to turn into leaflets to print out and distribute to friends, neighbours and strangers. The website's got no ads and no sponsors. My book Old Man in a Chair contains scripts of videos from April to September, and that's also free to download on Smashwords. If you'd like to see more videos from me, then please subscribe to my BNT channel. If you visit mainstream media, please put on messages asking readers to watch these videos to find the truth. Put messages on items of news which have nothing to do with COVID-19. I rather suspect they'll be less likely to be deleted. Although it may feel like it at times, please remember, you are not alone. More and more people are waking up, and we will win.
So I'm on my way back to the house.
Once
Let me see
people
this
have
fucking video.
woken,
I walked right in on their meeting and shit.
distrust the government, avoid mass
They
media,
escorted me out
and fight the
of my
lies.
own city building
If you want those books,
with no real
download
basis,
them
no legal
now
basis.
while they're still available.
Because
Thank you
they're
for
uncomfortable.
watching. An Old
Sorry,
Man
that doesn't
in a
fly.
Chain.
You know? I mean, give me a real reason, I'll leave.